utopian and what is Zaha is an extraordinary architect, as you know. She's incredibly intelligent, incredibly thoughtful, and super tender to our field and to those of us in it. She has been, I think, one of the great teachers of the field, both in person, as you will discover tonight, but also to the rest of the field. But most important of all, I think Zaha is simply the least boring person in our field. And so there can be no greater pleasure than to welcome the least boring person in architecture to this room, a room that I hope that Zaha still thinks of as her own room anyway, and it's a bit of a return home. For me personally, again, I just want to thank Zaha for continuing in the work to risk everything, and even here to risk those tender thoughts, those new projects, that work you're doing right now. Nothing could be better for us than that you're here. Zaha Hadid.
Yeah, I've been in this room so many times. I'm very also delighted to see well, when I was here maybe 25 years ago, and then 18 years ago, whatever, Stephen Hall was always here. I'm very happy to see Robert Middleton, who witnessed my early career at the AA. At the AA 40 years ago was, 35 or 38 years ago, was horrible. And I was accused by one of my teachers to be an actress between rehearsals. And of course I was very offended. It wasn't Rem, it was someone else, a Brit. Because I used to kind of go and deliberately wearing kind of funny furs and so on. And you were seen then, if you looked remotely clean, that you were decadent and corrupt. But this is the first time I'm not late because of myself putting my makeup on and so on. I was actually standing outside the Mercer downtown, and our car was late. So we hijacked a car, and which was standing there for another guest. I told him I was just going close by, and the poor guy had to take me 100 blocks. The last time I experienced that journey from downtown to Midtown in this incredible rush was in the days I used to party in New York in the mid-'80s, and I was out with friends of mine until 5 in the morning, and I took a taxi, and I said, I'm not going to take this taxi, it's on its last legs. And the guy said, you're going to be ridiculous, New York. So this taxi literally ran through all the lights, and as he was turning on 46th Street or whatever, the car exploded. Every wheel went everywhere, at 5 in the morning. So I'm sitting on a wheelless car in the middle of New York, and the guy was almost going to leave me there. I said, you're going to take me another cab on 8th Avenue, and there wasn't a cab. Anyway, as I was coming here, I was thinking of all these moments. Also, every time I come to Columbia trains, And there was another thing. Patrick Schumacher was my partner in the office, who's a tremendous guy, a great teacher, a much better teacher than I am. He has much more patience. The last time I was with him somewhere when he had food poisoning, which he had this time, was in Moscow, and a week before the White Revolution. So there will be another revolution here. And anyway, I was in a nice hotel, and anyway, we wanted an ambulance. There were two guys with me who were both pathetic and kind of throwing up everywhere and doing all sorts of horrible things. And when we left to Moscow, someone said, we do not let anyone give you an injection. So you have to carry your own little, things. So anyhow, we called an ambulance, and the ambulance came, and we had to take Patrick on a stretcher. And this woman first opened a box with injections this long, and he was like running away from it. Anyway, and there was another guy with me who was called Axel, and we took him in this ambulance to the French hospital. But the ambulance got lost because the nurse and the driver were flirting and running around Moscow. As you all know, Moscow is concerning, so it has many circles. And it used to be many years ago, in the days I used to go to Moscow with Ram and Kurt and all these people, the taxi would ask you if he thought you were a bit dodgy, which circle did you take? Because, you know, depending on whether you want a quickie or a long affair, dependent on which circle you took. So, and they used to always ask us, do you want to go around? And we didn't understand what was going on. I finally asked them, I said, what do they mean? I said, you know, I'll show you. So anyways, guys would run with the girls around Moscow. So we were running around in this ambulance. But anyhow, the French hospital was fine. This is the name of an album by Diana Ross. What was it called? Motion and whatever, Locomotion. Is one of, and my office specializes in names of objects, which I don't remember, like, you know, Floris, Chloris, all sorts of things. There's a show, there's just one glimpse of some of these ideas which we really are dealing with in the office. In terms of furniture, the show in Philadelphia is only about object and furniture, and the installation is about kind of maybe landscape and erosion, because these are the themes we have worked on with other projects. These are kind of the chairs, the sofa, the table, and so on. You doing this slide, You doing? Next. You know, part of segments of what they call dune formation. Next. And I'm not sure what I showed here when I was here, I think it's 3-4 years ago. But anyway, whatever I showed, many of these projects had not yet really been maybe completed or built. Maybe it was Wolfsburg was finished. Yeah, I remember it was Wolfsburg, because they wanted me to talk about concrete, and I thought that was not really. I think I was part of a concrete conference. The only way that Columbia could fit me in was and in the meantime, there are many other projects maybe I would have shown a few years ago have come to be realized. Well, so we have really focused in the last 6-7 years on trying to push further the boundaries and try to really build what one called a theoretical project, a utopian project, to build it in a variety of places around the world. So these are kind of some of the themes which were occurring then. This is some older project. Can you go back, Patrick? Which is aggregates and clusters. Next. Lines, bundles, and networks, where maybe if a confluence of lines, like in Rome, where the lines intersect like a delta. The work has also been very, very influenced in the last maybe 20 years since we did the competition in Cologne with land formation and topography and landscape as a way of dealing with very large programs. Can you go back one, Patrick? You jumped back one. He is not well, so forgive him if he's hopping around, trying to desperately go back to bed. So these are some of also the bridges. This bridge on the left is a project which was also completed in Abu Dhabi, the connection between Abu Dhabi and Dubai. Next. Landscape and topography. Starting with the Islamic Museum in Qatar, which was later done by IMP. We did a project which was about gradation of volume from very small to very large. This is the interior of the Wolfsburg project, landform for the Opera House in Abu Dhabi or Dubai, and also certain museums with the idea of topography and erosion, like the Quebec Library, which was to do with these volumes or valleys which are eroded, and also based on the tree of knowledge. So the tree bifurcates and branches out to different places. These are kind of, this is the pavilion in Chicago. These are various studies for different projects. The one on the right hand is a project which is on site for Soho, China in Beijing, which is a very large urban block, and the idea to kind of create a kind of vertical topography which allows these volumes to intersect through the kind of atrias and the commercial facilities. So China also is a company which means that you can actually have retail on different levels, maybe on the top or on the bottom. There was no necessary kind of segregation between these spaces. A very large master plan from the one in Beijing for a swarm of towers to projects in places like Bilbao, Istanbul, Singapore, landscape topography, which is actually already done. Many projects have been completed not by us, but by other architects. There's a very early project for the Guggenheim in Beijing, the Salerno ferry terminal, a library in Po, and then the icicle stations in Innsbruck. So I can go now in more detail on these. The Cincinnati Contemporary Art Center in Cincinnati, which we won in 1998, so it's now almost 14 years. Actually, the year we got it, I was teaching at Columbia. I taught at Columbia 3 times, once in the late 80s, and in 93, which was a really great studio, and 98. And that's when I heard that I had won this competition. So this idea of aggregates and let's say clusters appears again in a school, which we've done in a, can you go back please, Patrick? A school which is done in London in a kind of rather, poor neighborhood. The Academy program was a great program which has been cancelled by the current government. It was a program where you have a sponsor, and the sponsor gives you, can you go back? Can you go back one? He's telling me something, I don't know what. Thank you. Stay there for a minute, please. I know he's not well, poor thing. So the sponsor will give a certain amount of money, and he will choose the focus of the school. In this particular case, it's focused on math and sports, hence the kind of running track, and the government would match it 10 times. So whatever the sponsor gives £3 million, the government would match it for 30 million pounds. There's a school made of 4 schools, so all the schools are next. The schools are the one which kind of are defined by the concrete frame, and the running track runs through it. It's a very tight site. It was a garbage dump, and the intention is these schools would create kind of really a very nice environment for the students. All the classrooms are with a lot of transparency in terms of the doors are all glass. It's 4 schools, primary schools, secondary schools, all clustered together with a playing field outside. So it's an urban site fitting in a lot, like an incredible density on the side. All the playing field is a kind of one of the multi-purpose rooms which you can see through the park also, which is you could use for other facilities. All the different interiors of the different levels. A new project in Michigan from MSU, the museum for the Eli Broad Museum in MSU, Michigan State University, which is also kind of made of this, not fields, but facade fields, which are pleated stainless steel, with 2 entries from both sides, so that students in the campus and stuff moving through the side can easily go through it. It's a very simple diagram, which has the fall also could have windows looking out. It's a simple diagram on the interior where there's a central spine, which of that there are a variety of galleries of different sizes, which above and below. It's a kind of low, it's a 1-story high or 2-story high museum space, so you can kind of really manipulate it much more. There's some photographs on site. This will be opened in April. Seeing the windows, which you saw earlier. This might be not the collection which will be shown, but this is the Eli Broad pieces which will be used for the renderings. So when some of the walls are fair-face concrete, and the ground is all in wood. so you know where the public areas are and where the galleries are. So you see the kind of the detail of the stainless steel. And there are two entries, one which is this kind of carved out courtyard with glass around it, and the other one is on the other side. Rome, which is kind of made of many lines. This is the site on near Via Flaminia. And I'm not showing, because I've shown this so many times here. If you can go back, please. I'm very excited, can Google Earth it. There was one line which comes from the river all the way to the side, which really, in a way, agitated the whole site and allowed for this lines to, every time they turned, they meet the certain geometry on this adjacent side. So it's in a way quite contextual, but so every line on the site. We were all there for the presentation. Stephen was there, and we were all there, all out at dinner. And the boys were kind of talking about their projects. I did not. And they said, one of us will win it. And I decided to leave the next day. And Stephen said, come on, stay. We'll go to, I don't know where. And I said, no, it's a bad omen. I'm not staying, because I've gone through so many of these competitions, and you were sitting in your room waiting for them to call you to tell you you've lost. I said, no, I'm going. So I went on Saturday evening, and at 9 in the morning they called me to tell me that I've won. And I couldn't find Stevie. I didn't know where he was. He was in Hadrian's villa or somewhere. Anyway, these lines are interiors and exterior. The lines were, basically it was based on an older diagram where, again, it's a kind of field project where it's a campus where there are several buildings, but they all operate on the same as one single field. And these ribs, the idea was that they rigged the object, because it was mostly arte povera, and the object could be rigged from the ceiling. All the different staircases, but fundamentally it's the kind of a completely, mostly daily lit space, and then of course it's kind of controlled all the controlling all the kind of really lighting through the ceiling. So this is a combination of both lines and aggregates or clusters. Next. There's a project which has not finished yet. It's in Montpellier, and it's 3 departments, a very large archive building, a library which projects either theater, the other one is a sport, and it's like a kind of an urban block that's flipped up. So it's all precast concrete. The crevices in between the lines are all the public areas. This is part of the interior. So the idea, it's similar to the Quebec Library, where the idea of the tree of life and tree of knowledge, and so these transparent spaces become the spaces which are eroded of the stone or the rock, and they form all the public and facilities. And Stefan Hoff, who worked on this project, was a maniac. All the mullions are also curved. There's a project which opened last year, and these are all this is a museum for transport in Glasgow on 2 on the Clyde and 2. So the idea that it's a one continuous space, but also it kind of responds to the very large shipyards and on the Clyde, where they used to make the ships to take all the transport pieces across the world. So it's like a kind of a liquid kind of shed or melted shed, which has in it all the trains and the exterior. The roofscape, which is kind of part of the topography idea, and this kind of this agitated roofs line. Yeah, they're gonna live with that yellow color. I mean, people in my office, they always ask me what color should it be, and I always say gray, or white. And so they said, oh, they want color. So I said, lime yellow. And they had to kind of, they had to experiment. They had to convince me it should be green. So they bought the samples of this kind of green, and I said, no, it looks like yellow. And so everybody, the client likes it, but everybody wonders why it's like that. So the idea of the museum is kind of open on both ends. You can go back, and as you move through it, you end up with the ship, which is part of the exhibits of the Transport Museum. The bridge, which is also part of the expo in Zaragoza. So this interest in kind of structure, the substructure is in concrete, the structure is in steel, and it's cladded in this, prefab concrete. And it's basically on 2 levels. So it acts as an entry bridge and also as an exhibition space. The bridge in Abu Dhabi, which took 20 years to finish, 10. The last time I was there, they were knitting the steel. Literally, the concrete, the steel, for the concrete. The substructure is in concrete, the overstructure is in steel. And the idea of this project was like kind of a continuous line, like a dune, which starts at 0 and lifts up. So this idea of lines kind of connecting like in Rome, going vertically, like the Dubai towers. Many of the towers we had worked on. A show we did in Paris, which is all the tower research on many different scales, from very small to very tall. Like this is a competition for a project in Beijing. So the idea of these kind of towers really connecting and disconnecting, forming these kind of great atria. Next. Another study for a tower for Bilbao. Exoskeleton, showing kind of the skeleton on the exterior. And this is a tower which is almost completed in Marseille, where we had done a lot of research on these towers which actually expand near to the ground, because part of the project which we had worked on for many years was the ground condition, and how the ground condition led to the idea of topography and landscape, where the ground is slightly kind of inflated, and the idea of the hara, the way it lands on the ground, that it actually becomes like a skirt which meets the ground in a very gentle way. So this kind of has 2 movements, one to the ground, one to a bridge which connects to the educational facility. So the central part of the tower is, you can see this one. The structure is also curved, and the central spot is kind of different glazing from this is of a shipping company, and it's on the harbor in Marseille. And it's placed between all the motorways which bifurcate to go, so it's like almost between the bifurcation of the motorway. This is not my fish. There's the atria, which is higher up, connecting the 2 buildings together. Actually, the staff canteen and the restaurant. Some kind of double height spaces. This is before anybody moved in. And this is kind of a project between a tower and a pavilion. This is for, can you go back, please? This is almost like two houses, but connected not horizontally, but vertically. The client wanted a house which he bought the site outside Moscow with all the trees and the forest, and he thought if he's on the ground he cannot see the trees, and he'll see their trunks. So the idea, and obviously I liked him a lot, so he has to kind of run up and down this, I don't know how many floors. Well, there's an elevator. But basically the private house is above the entertainment house on the ground with all the kind of their spa and so on. And interesting also in kind of manufacturing and fabrication. This is also made of paneling, like a fiber concrete. The edge is all in steel. This is a kind of banya. And yeah. This project is really built almost like the diagram, I mean literally. The guy who works on it in the office, and me and him have a hate-love relationship. So I was threatened to send him there to sit on the balcony. The Guangzhou Opera House. So this is about, the project is about like two rocks sitting and eroded by the water on the Pearl River. Seeing from above next to all the new towers. When I went on site the first time, there was nothing there. Not only our project, but there was none of the towers. It was just an empty site on the water. So now that it's part of a park, one of the pebbles is gray or black, and the other one is white. And the interior reverses. One is the interior is white, the other one is the interior is black. This is a kind of a cage, and part of the cage is transparent, and part of it is solid with the cladding. So the idea that you navigate through these spaces, the two rocks nest over each other. Like these kind of crevices in the rocks, to allow you kind of really a multitude of spatial experiences, and also a way to move through the building as if going into like a hill. Part of the interiors. The interior of the auditorium, which is also formed like gypsum, and all in kind of gold, with all the lighting and conditioning all integrated. A symmetry on the auditorium, which allows you kind of the edges. These are the balconies. It's like a kind of a shell within a shell, like an oyster within the kind of rock. The stage. All the rehearsal rooms, also ribbed ceilings with lighting. The second space, the black space. I think I should thank the Guardian for this. I think it's the Guardian. Who is it, Beavis? Which one? Who did? Where is it? Where's our friend Roger? You're nodding?
It's the Guardian.
Okay. Thank you. If anybody goes to Guangzhou now, they can watch Mamma Mia in Chinese. And later it will be Cats in Chinese. And this was a very nice, actually, dance by Akram Khan, who was a choreographer and dancer in Britain. It was very, very nice. So you approach it on an oblique angle, and from the park, another opera house in Jordan, where the idea of the interior being like an erosion in the rock in Petra. And this erosion allows you to kind of really create not only a generous interior space, but also in this case you can have performances in the main lobby, so kind of semi-outdoor space. So the whole of the interior is carved out with the altar on both sides of the building. I hate people in drawings. Honestly, it makes me cringe. For years, I never put anything, and then people say, "Oh, you don't like people. Yeah, you don't like trees," and I hated shrubs. So anyway, it's a curse now on me that I'm fascinated by landscape. I hate trees too. And this is another project which was for a competition we did in Bogota, Colombia, for a conference center. And the idea that it is almost like making a new mountain, but in this case the mountain is also carved out, but in a different kind of way. So it's peeled and carved out. So when you walk into the conference center and an expo, whatever, it is completely transparent to the exterior and using the plaza as an extension of the interior of the project. This really also a fascination and interest in the civic domain or the civic zone started with very, very early on in my work, where the declaration that the ground becomes, and then multiple ground, and new ground, the elevated ground, the subterranean. So that's when this idea of peeling and carving came up, making it all part of this kind of really civic and public domain, and allowing the ground condition to be very porous and transparent to allow people throughout these projects. So in every occasion of a project, we try to really bring in or suck in the urbanism into the interior of the building. This is an artwork we did where the idea of the kind of organic morphology and the clusters also come together. The Chanel Pavilion in Central Park, outside the Institut du Monde Arabe in Paris. But the show is no longer about Chanel. The show inside the interior was a part of the kind of really the tower research against the Jean Nouvel elevation. The interior, which is the tower research, and this web-like space allow for paneling to project on or seating. So it's a torus, so you can walk into one end. Another thing which we were very interested in is also the organization of the plan, and through early days, the idea of really from abstraction, minimalist kind of really work. So you walk in one end and you come out in the same position. So you move through the building in one move. This is kind of the construction. This was a traveling pavilion. Went from made in the UK, went to Hong Kong. It was then put on a car park, and then it went to Japan, and then So this webbing could also become seating. Then it went to New York, and then it was supposed to come to London, but now it went to Paris. The project in Beijing, just this very large scale composition of kind of topography, like a mountain. So each layer, like a kind of contour lines, becomes one level, and they are connected through these. I hate people, you know. This is the kind of space which they do for exhibiting the project. There's sort of high-level walkways, which kind of really, again, deal with the idea of the space being not only on the ground, but a variety of levels cutting through the building. And of course, it gives you very odd adjacencies between these spaces. So like we have neighboring building, you see through it. This kind of sensuous lines. The interior of these office spaces. Again, going from the inside to kind of space which is being carved away on the exterior. This is the showroom with the other project in Beijing, which are literally 3 mountains as a kind of high-rise. A new project, which we haven't really designed, is kind of a car park in Miami, where the interior is carved away, so it brings in light. A field of furniture. Next, can we run through this, Patrick? There's a showroom which we did in London for bathrooms. So we did the first level of the exterior. It's again, it's all made in all the prefabricated concrete in different colors made in Germany, shipped to the UK, and the interior, all the interior pieces, all the furniture was made in Austria, including all the lighting. So it's very, again, a simple diagram. It's a very large space, but the interior is one long kind of public space, and off the space are these like cone spaces which house all the products, and they also house meeting rooms and stuff like that. And the idea that the outside, like water, will have a rippling effect on the exterior. And on the floor, the unfortunate thing, the toilets are not terrific. We're doing the next bathrooms for them. So they kind of, even these cones are kind of carved out to see through. And you can see the 2 color concretes. There's a show in Padova, which we did maybe 2 years ago. There's a series of field projects, which are one is for GSAPP, which is a university research facility in Saudi Arabia, on kind of really oil research, and so these are the early studies. Some of them are tensile structures, some are steel. So it's a kind of complete field, and there's kind of almost tabula rasa kind of condition, no existing topography. And the space in between are in different materials, so it kind of operates as kind of a shading space. All the exteriors are tessellated. Some of these interior spaces, which are again made of tensile. And this is an aerial view of the construction. The street structure. So the scale is kind of quite interesting. One of the propagated kind of elevations, facade studies. These are the stations for Innsbruck. Now we want to kind of really make a station which are going up the hill to the kind of a ski resort, and they are like icicles. So when it's snowing, it feels as if you are part of the kind of the snow landscape. The substructure again in concrete. The superstructure is in steel, cladded with this kind of semi-opaque glass. So there was no station like this. There were like just a line going up the hill. It's a tram. So when you are, up in that space, you frame the view. And looking out to the Alps. Salerno, which we won 10 years ago, is still on site. It is Italy. I mean, we won that the same year as Wolfsburg and the ski jump. Anyway, it's another shell structure. So it's kind of again, a simple diagram. It's a shell which has a kind of a ramp which brings in people in and out of the building. I daren't ask when it will be ready. Can I run through these? I put these especially for Stephen Hall because he always teases me that I converted the meditative tectonic into arches. So I'm back to the arch land. And there's many studies of many campuses showing how we can look at this kind of the idea of the shells. It's a movie on shell structures. And different countries. There's obviously in Baghdad. Of course we didn't win it because I thought it was not monumental enough. But you're not fast enough. All the kind of really ribbing is all scripted. The ribbing of the structure. Have we finished? Patrick is stuck on the arch, so he has to kill it till it gets there. That's what's great about him. So I think the more recent development is like they become much more floral and fluid instead of just rigid self-shell structure. There's a very small extension which we're doing for the Serpentine Gallery, also tensile. Next. The Olympic side. Well, London is hosting the 2012 Summer Olympics. This is the main stadium, which is mostly temporary. The ODA, which is the Olympic Delivery Committee, decided that most of these sites should be temporary structures and not permanent. This is a site in East London called the Lee Valley, which was mostly a swamp and gasworks. The building in the foreground is the swimming pool. So this is the cladding the roof of the pool. The original design, which is like a pavilion also in the park. The roof is a steel roof landing on 3 points, concrete. So the idea is like a wave or a kind of some sort of a sea living creature. The interior of the roof is all in wood. This is the real photographs. There was another pool, which is an exercise pool, under the bridge. Look at, as you come down, this is where the athletes begin to go into the pool. You walk under that roof. The bleachers on the sides are temporary. They're only there because the capacity of this pool is 17,000 people, and afterwards, in legacy mode, becomes only 5,000 people. So this will be only this, and then the rest of the stuff, where that line above is the glazing, is the area where there will be new glass. So it's literally swimming under a whale. All the diving boards, this side, are very sculpted. And there are kind of 3, 4 of them. And there was a launching event with Tom Daly, who's a great diver. And the last project I show is a project in Baku, where it's a hybrid of really 3 programs. It is a very large kind of mountain, but it's 3 programs and 3 different like mountain range. So it's a conference center, oratoria, museum, and a library. The foreground, the background is the library. The 2 pieces is the oratoria and so on. This is on site, being cladded steel frame, like space frame, cladded in prefabricated concrete fiberglass. Actually, 2 materials. Thank God it's you. So the idea is also seamless. It meets completely the ground and cascades all the way to the bottom of the site. So just showing the process of the construction. There's the beginning of the construction. The steel is not supposed to be blue, but they like the blue color. This is a kind of timeline. I'm sure the contractor will have a nervous breakdown eventually, but so far so good. So again, the 3 programs converge together in the lobby area, and then they separate into different, like very large rooms for the city. So this peeling structure appears also on some of the interiors. There's a library space. The conference center allows kind of this peeling to bring in light into the space. The lobby is converging together. Some of the interior spaces. Yeah, so it's a very generous lobby, and the idea that kind of it has basically more, it's 4 rooms with the interior lobby being part of the rooms. The interior is all laminated wood. And this is almost completed. And it has this detail of the exterior where it kind of just peels away like a kind of a fan, also like a shell. We photographed it before they installed all the seating. A nice posing. It's done by a guy in my office who's a great guy called Safed. That's it. Thank you.
Questions? And please use the microphone because there are 3 other rooms that are listening in. So up the back.
I'm curious what your attitude is towards organic architecture or parametric architecture in your own work, and if that's important to you in your design.
So what was the first bit?
What was the if parametric, the idea of parametric architecture
I
and
think
organic
Patrick can answer that. He's here. Parametric is his specialty.
Okay. Well, I guess my question is if it's important to you at all in the work.
Well, I think it is. I think what we try to do is to really achieve a fluid space. It's about space and how to achieve fluid space, and also the implication that it's a seamless kind of condition in terms of urbanism. It's the one continuous surface projects and fluid on the exterior and the interior. So that was we tried to do in this last period of 7-8 years. No questions.
Just shy.
It's okay.
Yes, up the back.
I really appreciate that you're putting together the slideshow with a number of construction photos, but I was wondering about what you think about the tectonics of architecture and materiality and how that relates to the direction of work that you're going towards. Just in terms of the look of it is much more monocoque, to use Greg Lynn's term, but what do you think of how materiality relates to the future of your architecture?
Materiality.
And tectonics, architectural tectonics.
Maybe it's Columbia conversation. What is it? I used to come to reviews here. I had honestly not understood anything they said. I'm sorry, I don't mean to. I think that part of the focus in the last few years is to focus on structure and on material, because now there is availability of material which we did not. We could do it before, but in the level of complexity, to achieve complexity and materiality was really has made easier, of course, through computing, but also the material research is enormous, and I think it's very exciting for me, and also. Yeah, I think it was difficult to achieve all these things before. So I'm sure that we can do stone buildings, but I think the investigation into modern materials also allows you these possibilities.
There's another question just in front.
Yeah, Zaha, you're arguing that this forms have motion embedded in them. The form is motion.
No, that
And-
was only for the first slide.
Yeah. Would you,
No, I used to actually talk about motion a lot. And the idea that, of course, people tried to convince me for many years that buildings don't move. I mean, now we designed projects which could move around. But the idea that the way you control and manipulate geometry, you could feel it's almost like moving. But of course, it's not moving. Or suspended. So all the idea which had to do with the lightness of the building, the way it lands on the ground, the way it touches the ground, the idea of the structure, the column kind of really research was all based on the idea of lightness and that it almost touches the ground very gently.
so if life is motion and a form is motion, you like capturing the motion, and once you capture the life, you will kill it. Can I argue that your forms are like dead motion rather than moving motion?
And they're frozen, of course, because you have to build them and ground them. They are frozen motion. It's like standing in a traffic light.
Thanks.
You know,
Thanks.
I mean, the car can move, but it's temporarily stationary till we find a way that they really move around the city.
Okay, so I think the next one is up here in the back.
Hi. I was wondering if you have any fantasies about inventions that would happen in the realm of physics or materials or things like that, and if that application, you're anticipating something like that. or-
Sorry, I didn't understand this.
Would you fantasize about certain sort of amazing developments in materials or something that would be?
Or do you fantasize about invention?
I don't fantasize at all.
Okay. So you're just totally satisfied with our technology's application to architecture, or you're not frustrated at all by the pace of architectural technology?
Can you translate? Sorry, the acoustics are not good in this room.
No, I think the answer is no. If you look at the word, the answer is no. It's not being held back by.
Oh, I see. That's what she means.
Yeah.
No, I think it's not. I think it's in a way. I think that the built work, in a sense, almost has more freedom than the drawing, because. I mean, with the drawing, with the painting, you only have 2 or 3 materials, and I think it's now you can do many more things through materiality and fabrication and structure. I mean, the idea of structure was to really kind of liberate these spaces from a column grid. It's a response to the idea of the city made of repetitive floors and production, and now you can do a single item. It doesn't have to be the idea of kind of production like it did in the early part of the century or even in the 60s. So we moved away from one idea of doing a building to another. Precast concrete, it gives you much more speciality or special conditions on these projects.
So there was one up in the back, further over, and then we'll come slowly towards the front.
Hi. I wanted to say I really appreciate the sculptoric beauty of your shapes and geometries. I was just wondering if you ever wanted to consider ecology and climate impact in the architecture, the beauty that you
We
make.
do, actually. I mean, even the pool, many of these projects are, they use particular concrete. We are very conscious of it now. I think it's very important. But it's not just only in the kind of this idea that we should really only renovate, but you can also through the geometry of some of the projects, it allows you a much bigger ecological kind of freedom in terms of how they impact on these sites. So we are very conscious of it now, but with that, one can also do very interesting things.
And like vernacular materials and solutions for.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it could be interesting in terms of, especially like, cooling and air conditioning and ventilation and so on. This has all been taken into account. But I also believe in the advancement of the field, and I think that that's very critical, but I think one can learn from these previous kind of research in terms of kind of local conditions and experiments to enhance what is done now.
Okay, thank you.
So the question way in the very back, which has been waiting.
I actually appreciated the one with the shed that was sort of stretched out, and I really liked the form from above. And I think it was kind of interesting in conjunction that with what you said, I don't like people figures, or I don't like people because...
No, I mean, I'm joking.
Oh yeah, I'm glad. Because it was sort of sad because from underneath that would sort of read as a pattern from above. That's the only situation in which you sort of see the entire gestalt of that form. And it's almost like the building was an architecture designed for helicopters, not designed for people inside helicopters, but architecture for helicopters. And I guess you could have, one could think about other kinds of architecture, like architecture for
Yeah, I think
trains,
it's very
architecture
nice
for
for me
buildings.
to
But
be
I'm
able
wondering
that's
who-
when I fantasize to fly through space.
Yeah, okay, well, I guess that's great because that's sort of my question is like, who do you design for? And I'm not asking like the demographic or like the program or, whether you design
Well, I
for
think you have
artists
to
or
kind
not,
of
but
to
like,
go some of these build projects. And I think that from the ski jump to Rome, people are really propelled to it because I think people want to experience something other than their domestic situation or what is very familiar to them. And so you are designing for these people who are, I mean, for example, in Rome, in that particular area, there was no public space, and now you find every day in the evening many people going to that plaza, which was not meant only as a plaza, but to kind of really go into it. Also, to go into the museum is like walking on the kind of a sort of hill town. So of course it's done for people, and I don't like them in renderings, that's all.
but I guess what I'm asking is if that's the
You got 2
case.
shots. You got 2 shots.
Okay.
No, I think we're going to come down here. She's been waiting. We need to use the microphone. We have a couple of hundred people next door.
How do you feel that your math background contributed to your designs?
Well, maybe in the beginning in abstraction and my interest in geometry. I mean, it was a long time ago, so I'm not sure how it affects me now, but I know at the beginning it impacted on the abstraction.
And how did you convince people that your designs were buildable?
Well, it took a long time. I trained a lot myself. Because I always believed that, I mean, they were very simple in those days. People looked at the drawings and it didn't land on the ground. I thought it was not possible. I always believed there are. So I was never for one moment kind of hesitated. And I had really also the help of really great engineers in London. And they kind of not necessarily made it logical. I think with them, one can work out, the common sense of really structure. And as an architect, you have to sort of know how the building would be built or stands up, even if they don't work out all this detail. And I can't claim to be an engineer, but you have to have some sort of common sense about it. So I don't think every client in the world is convinced. And I think what changed, I think the cities wanted something other than what is normative. And in Europe, I think it's the advancement in the field has been amazing. And there's many projects in many countries which have been very exciting. And I think that I don't want to isolate Britain and America. I think because most of the work is corporate, it's much more difficult. As opposed to in Europe with the competition program, it allowed younger firms, inexperienced firms, variety of ages to actually do public projects. Because what changed, that you can only do public projects through competition programs. And that made it possible for me to enter these competitions and win some of them. If I had just been doing like private houses or office space, which I would like to do, would be much more difficult.
So we're going then bounce over there, and then down to there, and then back up there.
When you started your career, you started with a very marked, or relied on a very marked representational style. And as you progressed through build work and through your later work,
Yeah,
what is
I think maybe in my final year at the AA, the kind of the drawing became. It was also a time when drawing was very important to a lot of people, and I have to kind of say that Alvin Boyarski, who was the chairman of the AA, I think he liked drawing, but he also, and I think in the late, he never declared this, but in the late 70s, early 80s, I think he made a conscious decision to support people which had a kind of, the work would have a protected reality. And I think it was a very critical move on his part, and therefore, people like myself really benefit a lot from it because he gave us a platform to exhibit and to teach and so on.
So I guess my question is, what is your current stand on architectural drawing and representation?
I think it's it's died, which is a great shame because I really enjoyed it. But I mean, if I sketch something, my office don't understand it. And maybe there is a whole course here doing sketching, but honestly, it took thousands of years to kind of perfect their beautiful line drawings. Is gone. I mean, you can't. I'm not sure how. Maybe artists will trade back, but architects, I think, maybe in some remote place, or they don't have a computer, they can do it. But it really is. I mean, it was an art form. I mean, I know that, it was unbelievable, and I personally myself enjoy it. And for me, I have to say it's a great loss, because, I mean, Patrick would remember, and Simon is here would remember. I used to be hysterical, fanatical about line drawing precision. And there were drawings, which I'm sure I threw out, where every non-crossing corner was circled in red pen, because I knew blue, you can print it out, and it won't show. Or they can rub it out, but red is dead. So for me it's a great loss. And I enjoyed the kind of culture of material, because it also always, there was an error factor. And when you did models, you design and you did them. I don't think many people have that facility. I don't know, maybe they have it here, but they don't have it in Europe. The facility to draw and to think as you're drawing or making models, so you can change things. The models now in the drawings are really exactly as you thought them. But of course there are people who are more talented, even drawing on the computer, and more abstract, and has a different depth than others. I mean, I can't say that's all the same. It isn't. But I think computing also brought something else with it. It's not speed. It brought another layer of investigation, which is very interesting. I think that the next few years you'll find, in terms of, not only material for cladding, but also structure, and maybe hybrid structures where material and structure becomes, I mean, I had a girl in my office a few years ago, and I was asking her what project she was doing, and I said, what is that? What is that? She said, that's a space between things. And I said, well, what was that supposed to be? And I also have a habit, if somebody upsets me, I go on. And she said, but you don't need to detail it. I said, why not? She said, you can just build it from the computer. I mean, she really believed that. And I couldn't believe my ears. I thought, there's a girl in my office thinking that she can give that drawing with a space which doesn't know what it's doing, and they can build it. But eventually, you can, not literally. And they build. And also there is this idea that, as an architect, you're an idiot, and the computer designs for you. I mean, there are historians and art critics in the UK who obviously their knowledge of everything is zero, believe that, it's possible because of the computer. So I think but I even through teaching, I think the generation which did know how to draw and make models by hand and so on, and then learned computing. They had a very kind of great wealth of kind of culture of material, and but I mean it could be taught. It's not impossible, you know. And I think that what I think is also interesting about computing is that you don't have this kind of enormous difference between, you know, and when you're students, between people, whether they're good at it or not good at it. They can learn it. And you know, I used to have a great Japanese student who was very, very talented, crazy, and he used to always say, you know, he had 10 thumbs because he couldn't draw. You know, I had to kind of get the students who could draw to teach him to draw. He just couldn't do it. But he was a great, great designer, and I'm not sure what he's doing now or whether he ever learned it. But I mean, as I was saying earlier, you know, when I started the AA, it was a very similar. I don't think it was even as it was grimmer than it is now, because there was no respect for architects. There was no work in the 70s. So when we had to kind of really reinvent the profession, and I think, you know, there is a similar moment now. It is very exciting. You know, the only lacking thing is there is less interest in precedent and history. And I mean, Robin used to have all his lectures on the weirdest topics, and very good. And we had to, you know, even if you're not interested, by passing through the lecture hall, you see these things. And I'm sure that maybe they do this at Columbia, but I think in English school, the ignorance is devastating. You know, like I say to a guy in my office, oh, you know this project by Paul Rudolph? He said, who is that? Is that some German? You know? And so, you know, I used to quiz them. I gave up. You know, like, you know, do a quiz session. Once a student by the A, I asked him to do a seminar on Rietveld, and he said, why are you giving me this? Why don't you give me something well known? And he never knew Rietveld. They knew Oscar Niemeyer. They never knew anything. And there was this idea at the A that knowledge prohibits creativity, and I tell you, it does not. So I think that, you know, it's all has to be kind of weighed out. Too much of one maybe prohibits the other. But I think that it was a very, I mean, you know, I was at the A when it was a 3-day week, and the whole of London was pitch black. There were candles in the shops, and we had to negotiate with our friends where to spend the evening to watch pop music, and also to be able to shower, to work. I remember this day being freezing cold, wearing mittens and drawing at odd hours because there was no light. And I had to use a candle, so it was like 19th century. There was no possibility. But I think that really also, you know, we couldn't accept that as the life is going to be terrible. And so it brought an incredible excitement, and I think it was brought in by the students, the teachers, and so I think at that particular moment in architectural history influenced the next 30 years, and it was very critical.
So I actually think it would be a shame. Do you want to take more questions? Or this was a very beautiful one.
No, I think I can stop on. You're losing your voice. I'm losing my voice.
So there are moments of magic in every school. I think the answer to that question could be published immediately as an incredibly thoughtful reflection. I mean, you're just listening to raw intelligence operating, and I think it, even to those of us who know your work, we think you know your work really well, is unbelievable, the different directions in which it's going as a kind of a research. It's the exact opposite of a kind of churning out, a winding of the wheel. It's amazing work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.